What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Going the Distance podcast presented by ImmaculateSports.com. Twitter's at ImacSports.
Instagram is also at ImacSports.
TikTok, YouTube, Immaculate Sports. It's episode 209, week one of the NFL season in the books. Lots of great games, a couple of not so great games. We'll get into all of that with the power rankings. But before that, we do have some baseball to talk about. There's only 1 month left, about 12 or so games for each team. So we'll make sure we get to that. And this is going to be a good one, Kyle. Officially 5 years, baby.
Yep. It's going to be pretty uniform this week as well, too. We're going to be doing Players of the Week for both MLB and NFL, and then power rankings for both MLB and NFL as well, too. So kind of just a status check on both the leagues through 1 week of the NFL and through however many weeks we've been in the MLB as we get closer to the playoffs. And then halftime, we'll be doing some fun stuff with some college football as well, too. So we'll get into that as we go on. But starting off with the opener, let me just debrief here. Yeah. I couldn't find anything originally, partially because my bets lost, every single one of them. My fantasy teams lost, every single one of them. The Raiders lost. And so if I guess I were to find a bright spot, it would be how Saquon was being used in the Philadelphia Eagles lineup as a Saquon owner in fantasy was pretty cool. It's good to see that he's finally being utilized in a good offense and not forced to do every single little thing in that team's, possible ability to get a win. It's only week one, and he already has 3 touchdowns. So I enjoy that for Saquon, and I'm sure he's enjoying it as well, too.
Yeah, well, Kyle, I was at Monday Night Football last night, and despite Aaron Rodgers, Tyron Smith, Quinnen Williams, and Sauce Gardner playing excellent, for 95% of the game, I was very frustrated. I know a lot of people have compared football to a chess match, but last night I could literally see the chessboard when I looked down on the field because Kyle Shanahan was 1 move ahead of Robert Saleh every damn time. It feels like the Jets were about to get some momentum, and then they could never get off the field. That one stop to get the ball back. And that led to the Niners holding the ball for 40 minutes of that game. Rodgers and the Jets had about 6 minutes to try to come back at the end, but it was Tyrod Taylor time already. So you can only hope this is a week one problem. This is not something that keeps coming up in games we're supposed to win. Luckily for us, this will probably be the best team we will play all season long. But a little concerning and missing a few players on the D-line that probably could have helped stop the run.
Yeah, it was a weird game for you guys, but as I texted you, usually Aaron Rodgers teams tend to struggle in the first game, whether it's him or not that struggles, it doesn't matter, and they usually end up being fine. So as long as he's not hurt, like Robert Saleh said today, the status of this season, even at 0-1, is a whole lot better than it was last year, even at 1-0.
100%.
So I think there's still a lot of bright things to look at. For the Raiders, not so much. I'm not going to get into that game. We'll talk about some other stuff later. But we'll get right into player, pitcher, rookie of the week in the MLB. And Skyler, who is your player of the week?
I ended up going with Pavin Smith of the Diamondbacks. He had a game with 3 homers. He finished the week, though, 4 homers, 9 RBIs. And I thought he had the best week in a vacuum. I know since then Schwarber has another leadoff homer, so he could probably be the guy too, but I stuck with Pavin Smith here.
Yeah, I also went with Pavin Smith. He had only 9 at-bats, but his 4 hits in those 9 at-bats were all home runs, with a 3-homer game on Sunday Night Baseball, of course, against the Astros. He also had a stolen base and OPS 2.3. So a great week for Pavin. I want to say he went to Auburn, so I'm sure he's rooting for the Tigers. I don't know. That was pretty random. Pitcher of the week, Skyler, who do you go with here?
Another snake. It's Zach Gallen, 6 no-hit innings with 8 Ks in San Francisco, and they needed every bit of that outing because the bullpen has been blowing games for them, and they've tried to separate themselves from San Francisco, which they've finally done, and then next is the Padres, and they're still right next to each other. They're going to need their aces to come through like this up until October, it seems like.
I went with Shota Imanaga as my pitcher of the week. The combined no-hitter for the Cubs. He held the main part of it. 7 innings, no hits, of course, 2 walks, and 7 strikeouts for the rookie who continues to dominate in Shota Imanaga. On to Rookie of the Week.
Yeah, Shota Imanaga is going to be the Rookie of the Week, of course. I couldn't watch that game. Unfortunately, I was working, but seems like someone's always making history every night in baseball. Also, shout out Luis Eel. Looks like he's back. 1 hit ball against the Cubs later in the week.
Yeah. I also wish Shota, of course, he wins that Pitcher of the Week. He's going to win my Rookie of the Week. Pretty self-explanatory there. Now on to the NFL. We have 3 awards as well here too, but it's Player of the Week, Defensive Player of the Week, and then Rookie of the Week to kind of, I guess, defensive players are pitchers now.
Yeah.
Kind of makes sense, I guess. They play defense in a way. So, Player of the Week together, who do you choose here?
I have to go with Jordan Mason of the San Francisco 49ers over the quarterbacks. His 152 total yards and touchdown while filling in for Christian McCaffrey was not only impressive because I was there watching him do it, it was the way he did it. 13 broken tackles against a very physical defense. It's just ridiculous. It just shows how prepared everybody on this whole team is. The well-oiled machine is back despite all the distractions.
Yeah, it's got to be Jordan Mason for me as well, too, and I'm happy that you chose him as well because I would understand the no pick here with how the game went for you being a Jets fan. But, yeah, Jordan Mason's got to be the pick here. He, stepped up whether he knew on Friday or, knew the morning of, who knows. It's not for us to determine, but regardless, he was prepared. The 28 attempts for 147 yards on the ground, a touchdown, a catch for 5 yards as well, too. He played great. I know there's going to be a lot of stuff. Any running back can succeed in that system. And whether that's true or not, who knows? But Jordan Mason showed that it could succeed with him. And as a Jordan Mason owner in both of my fantasy leagues, I wouldn't mind to see him he wants to take another rest week before he gets fully healthy.
There you go.
Defensive Player of the Week together. Who do you go with?
I went with Zach Bond, the linebacker of the Eagles. A lot of people were worried about this defense losing pieces and him stepping into TJ Edwards' spot. He was unstoppable in Brazil. Against Green Bay, he had 15 tackles, 2 game-winning sacks. It was pretty awesome, honestly. I have to give him honorable mention to my guy Javon Holland, though, punching the ball out from Travis Etienne on the 1. That basically saved the game for them.
Yeah. A lot of great defensive performances. I felt like this was more of a interpretation award this week than there was, this guy for sure. And so I went with a crazy one, Alante Taylor, who had 3 sacks as a corner last week for the Saints. I know it's against the Panthers. I know the Panthers absolutely suck. Definitely probably the worst team in the NFL. But to get 3 sacks in week 1, that's starting off your depoy race pretty well, even though I don't think Alante Taylor is going to stand for it, for week 3. I don't think he's going to be in the conversation. But, if you want to be in it after week 1, that's a great way to do it as a corner to get to the quarterback 3 separate times. I wonder if it's the same blitz that they sent 3 times over again. They just didn't pick it up either other time because that would feel like very Panthers-y, but who knows? On to Rookie of the Week.
I went with another defensive player, Kalen Bullock, the safety of the Houston Texans. It's so rare to find a great ball hawk after the first 2 rounds of the NFL draft. And the 3rd rounder from USC made a great snag in the red zone to pick off Anthony Richardson in a 1-possession game. I kind of went with how important was this guy for my awards, and he came through when it really mattered.
Yeah, I guess I wanted a bit of a different direction for how important it was. I went with Jaden Daniels as my Rookie of the Week. He was also the best rookie quarterback.
Yes.
He didn't, have any plays that was going to win the game. They lost by, I think it was 14 points. But Jaden Daniels looked very solid in his first, about to say big league, but I guess that's technically the big leagues as well, too. So his first big league performance went 17 for 24, 184 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. But the big thing was his running. 16 carries, 88 rushing yards, and 2 touchdowns. I'm interested to see how the Commanders use him long-term as a rusher because eventually, if you plan this guy to be your star quarterback, you're not going to rush him the way that they did a few times. I saw him, just snap the ball and just run straight into a pile right after, 3 or 4 times. And that's not exactly the thing I'd want to do with my, suspected franchise quarterback. But when you're Washington, you only have Terry McLaurin and you don't even use him. I think he did a good job. So, Jane Daniels, the guy who I wanted Rookie of the Week in Week 1. On to our MLB Power Rankings. We haven't done these in 3 weeks. Last time that we did it was episode 206 on August 20th. So it's been approximately 20 days since we did it last. And we'll get it started with the honorable mentions if you have any, or any teams that just missed that you want to talk about.
Yeah, Boston and San Francisco both fell a little behind their projections this month.
Yeah, there was a few teams that fell off a little bit for me. Seattle, I kept off the list. I think I had them at number 15 last time. I believe they're about 2 games over 500, and with their current situation, I don't really see them doing the best and getting back into that spot. And then Boston, who's fallen off as well too, has the same record as Seattle at 73 and 71. Also only 3 games out of the wild card spot, but with their schedule coming up and some of the things going on with their team, I did keep them off the list, even though I had them at 14 last time. Number 15.
I did keep Seattle on the board. I just couldn't really find a lot of teams that were as competitive as them these past couple of weeks. They're doing everything they possibly can to get back into the race. They just aren't scoring enough runs, and they're going to come up just short.
Yeah. Number 15 for me is a team who's had a great past month. It's the Chicago Cubs, sitting at unranked from the last time that we did this. 74 and 70, so better records in both Seattle and Boston. 5 games out right now, currently in the wild card, but their hot streak this past month allows them to be back in it. It starts with the pitching. Even without Justin Steele, who's on the injured list again, they've been good and have been pretty surprising for me because I didn't think that they would. If you were to tell me that they would sell, or not really sell at the deadline, but do what they did at the deadline, and then their biggest pieces they got back, Isaac Paredes, would suck once he got to the Cubs and they'd somehow get better, I'd be like, what the fuck? But then again, that's baseball, and the Cubs are playing good ball right now, so they get the 15th spot. Number 14.
Yeah, next up for me is going to be the Cubbies. I have 18 around the approximation of where they would have been when we last did this, but either way, they're back in here because they're hot. 13 and 6 in the last 3 weeks. That's massive. They're still not really in the race necessarily, but they're keeping themselves alive.
Yeah. Number 14 for me, I'm going to put the Detroit Tigers here, and they've been on a roll in the second half. 73 and 71, same record as Boston and Seattle, but they're only 3 games out of the wild card, of course, just like those other 2 teams. But they've been one of the best teams in baseball in the second half, and that's due to the top-of-the-line rotation that they have, with starting off with Tariq Skubal and some of the other guys that they've used. Getting Kerry Carpenter back a few weeks ago is huge. Riley Green being healthy has been huge. Torkelson coming up from AAA and becoming himself again was really big. This team's starting to hit their stride. They're starting to become the Tigers team that we expected them to be here a couple years ago when they were, starting to make their ascent into relevancy once again. Number 13.
Next up, I got the Minnesota Twins, falling back a little from the 11th spot. It's a really cold streak right now, but they still own the last wild card spot. We know this is a heat check kind of team. They're always going to be in it as long as they're in the tournament.
Yeah, I also have Minnesota in the 13th spot. They moved down 4 spots from my last rankings, 76 and 68. Like you said, they have the last spot in the wild card. Kind of scared. But my note here is that the team went cold, and it's sad because even though Bucks is hurt and Correa is hurt, they've been relatively healthy, awkwardly enough, even though they're still quite hurt. Royce Lewis just hasn't been producing as much, and some of the other guys have slowed down as well too. Minnesota, the team that I had as a legitimate contender a month ago, is looking like it's going to be pretty tough for them to hold on to a wild card spot. Number 12.
Number 12, I got the Astros here. They haven't moved at all, even though they've played pretty well. It just seems like it's one or the other for them. You can never get a great complete game from them. You either have a great outing from Arrighetti or Jordan goes 4 for 4 and they lose. They've been right around 500. Same with these next basically 6 teams. I don't know what's going to happen, but the Astros are usually pretty dangerous if they get into the tournament relatively healthy.
Number 12 for me is going to be where I slot the Atlanta Braves, currently outside of a playoff spot, 1 game back from the Mets for the final wildcard spot at 78 and 66. everyone's hurt on this team. They don't have Riley. They don't have Albies. We know that they don't have Acuna, Strider, some of the other guys as well too. Yet they're still finding a way to get the job done. Azuna has been great this whole season. Chris Sale has been the NL Cy Young and will win the award. It's good to see that he's finally going to get one. But how about that trade first off? They traded Von Grissom. Chris Sale and Von Grissom, I think, has been out or in AAA the entire season. Maybe has a handful at bats on the big league squad. But what a trade for Atlanta. They tend to do that a ton. And it feels like this team is just like a band of misfits right now. I saw I hate saying this, but I saw a TikTok a couple weeks ago, and it was talking about Whit Merrifield, Ramon Laureano, and Gio Urshela. And it wasn't – they're all guys that got DFA'd, but this guy changed the name of DFA'd, designated for assignment, to designated for Atlanta. And it was actually pretty cool because all those have done pretty well since they got in there, especially Merrifield and Laureano. And they've been two of the main cogs. And why Atlanta's still in this, even with their 4 best players out. Number 11.
Number 11, I got another team in this same exact group I think we're both heading into right now. It's the Kansas City Royals. They're down from 10. The pitching's great. Their captain, Bobby Witt, is great. We've seen the ghost of so many players we thought were done, including Salvador Perez. And they still have a pretty good spot there, the second wild card in the American League. I just don't know if they can go on a run yet. We'll see. I kept them out of the top 10.
Yeah. I also have Kansas City at 11, moving down 4 spots from the last ranking. 79 and 66, like you said, have a wild card spot right now, up 2.5 over the Twins. So they're about 5.5 secured into their spot right now. And even with that, I'm not relying on them right now because, one, Vinny Pasquantino is out for the season, most likely out 6 to 8 weeks as of a week ago. Definitely going to be the regular season. Only if they, have a good run into the playoffs, he can come back. And you can see that they're, grasping for whatever because they got Robbie Grossman, they got Tommy Pham, they got Yuli Gurriel, who got hurt in his first game or second game. It's just they're trying to find any little thing to make them better. And when you see that happening, you can tell this team is on the verge of falling off. Even with some of the great things that they've done this year in starting pitching, having an MVP contender in Bobby Witt, like you said, Salvador Perez as well too, and having some really good pieces in their bullpen headed by now former A, Lucas Hurstad. Number 10.
Number 10, I did keep the Braves up a little higher than you, only down 1 spot. They did lose that spot to the Mets, and we'll talk about them pretty soon here, but I don't think they're done. We've seen them do this before. They could realistically go out and win a bunch of games 2-1 here and get right back to the top of the wild card, and I'm not going to say they're done until we get to October.
I have the Mets in the number 10 spot. I don't think Skeller is hitting at my list there by saying we'll talk about the Mets soon enough. But I have the Mets moving up 2 spots from the last rankings, 79 and 65. They just went on a 9-game win streak that was capped or finished on Sunday, I want to say. My only note here is I have, oh my God, because they play in that everywhere. Seems to be the mantra of this team, and I'm just going to keep on saying it. So the Mets get the number 10 spot. Number 9.
My number 9 is going to go to the Cleveland Guardians. They're down from 6. This is one of their biggest drops all season long, but they did just win a 3-game series in Kansas City, so they're going to get the nod over them, obviously. But I still think they're in the group of, we're kind of missing something here, guys. I don't know what's wrong yet.
Yeah, our rankings are starting to align here. I have Cleveland as my number 9 team, moving down 3 spots from the last rankings, 82 and 62, and they're still, like you said, holding on to the spot in the division. But the starting pitching still scares me, and the second half struggles on offense continue, even with some big hits from some guys in the middle of their order. Overall, the product isn't great, and so Cleveland moves down 3 spots, but still stays as a single-digit team at number 9. What about number 8?
Number 8, I got the Padres. They're down 1 spot. There's another team right next to them geographically and in the standings that I bumped over them. I'm just a little concerned about Musgrove and Darvish possibly having to throw a lot of innings in the postseason. That scares the crap out of me. Everything else has been perfect, though. Tatis is back. They look good.
Number 8 for me is a team I've been down on this entire second half, and it's the Milwaukee Brewers. They do move up 3 spots from the last rankings when I had them at 11 because they've surged up 82 and 61, still pretty much a lock to be the 3 spot in the NL come playoff time, but I'm still not buying it. I don't like the rotation. I like Freddie Peralta, and I like sometimes what DL Hall has, but Savalier, Colin Ray, Tobias Myers, again, just time and time again, they've been good, but I still can't buy it in a playoff setting. And until they do that, they're going to be low on my list. So the rest of the year, unfortunately for them. Number 7.
Number 7, that other team I was referring to is the Arizona Diamondbacks, of course. They're always going to be tied with the Padres. Great run last season, and I don't doubt that they can do it again. Seems like they haven't had a bad week this entire second half.
Yeah, Arizona's my number 7 team as well, too. They move up 3 spots from the last ranking, sitting at 80 and 64. This lineup was hot, even without Ketel Marte and Christian Walker in it. Now they got them both back. Corbin Carroll's playing the way that we expect him to play. Jake McCarthy's like the ultimate tough postseason player when he's got his speed and contact working together. And that's why they have the best offense in baseball. They've scored 782 runs this season. I believe that's the high mark in the league by like a wide 50-run margin right now. So they've been really tough to get out. And I feel like not a lot of people are talking about their offense being this complete juggernaut in the MLB.
Yeah.
Number 6.
Number 6, I'm going with the Mets. Massive jump up from the 15 spot last time. And since then, they've been the hottest team in baseball. It's 14-5 over those last 3 weeks. You want to be this team heading in excuse me. I'm getting excited about the Mets right now. You want to be that team that's this hot heading into October. If they can keep that going, things are looking really great for our Subway Series prediction. That's for sure.
Yeah. Number 6 for me is going to be the Padres. So they do have a slight edge on the Arizona Diamondbacks like they do currently in the standings, sitting at 81 and 64, half game higher than the Snakes, Jake Snakes, that is. I like saying that. Darvish is pitching tonight. Musgrove has been back for a couple of weeks now. King and Cease have both been really good. Like you said, I don't know how ready, Musgrove and Darvish could be in a playoff setting. But Musgrove has had some up and downs in his start, so who knows with him, and Darvish we really haven't seen too much of yet. But Tatis is healthy, which is why they're higher than the Diamondbacks for me. This team has, I think, their best player, Jackson Merrill, right now, hitting 6th in the lineup, which has been really weird because they've done that the entire season with him. I think they need to move him to the 2-hole, come to the playoff spot. I know you've had Cronenworth there or Machado or Tatis there the entire season, but you got to have the best players on your team coming up the most that they possibly can. And Jackson Merrill is a stud. He's hitting nearly 300. He has over 20 homers, around 20 stolen bases. This guy is the best player on the Padres that's not a reliever because their bullpen's really damn good too.
Mm-hmm.
Number 5.
I decided to keep the Braves at the 5 spot. This is probably 2 months in a row because the pitching factory is still going strong. At this point, it's a game of individual matchups for Milwaukee. They're going to try to find the easiest path to win the division and keep doing it. That's what they've done for the past 10 years, and that's why I still have them at the 5 spot, because we know no matter what happens, they're going to be hosting a playoff series. And that's massive.
And number 5 for me is going to be where I slot the Houston Astros, who are at the number 5 spot last time that we did these rankings as well, too. I know you look at the record and say, hey, well, that doesn't quite make sense that they're in the number 5 spot. They got the division locked up. Seattle's not coming back. They have the 3 spot. They're going to be playing a series at home to start the playoffs. They're going to have the Houston faithful that's been there, every single game for the last, 10 years behind them the entire time. Oh, guess what? They just got Kyle Tucker back. Houston's not going anywhere. They're going to be fine, even with the starting pitching being down a little bit. The bullpen's still scary, even with, the early season scare of Josh Hader and Ryan Presley maybe not being as good. Zach Geloff just sent a ball to the moon. I saw Skyler mouth, holy shit, I want to say.
Yeah, that's pretty accurate.
Against Houston and Arrighetti. But I like Houston a ton. They're back, man. They're back.
Not tonight, baby.
Number 4.
Number 4, I had to keep the Orioles here. It's been a really rough stretch. They've been right at 500 for the past 30 days, but the O's are still way more explosive than the rest of the wild card teams. They're going to be just fine. And another team that has experience in the playoffs despite being so young.
You have Baltimore at the number 4 spot as well, too, down 2 spots from the last rankings, 82 and 63. The record's fallen off a little bit. But the only question for me is, how do you navigate the playoff pitching? The bullpen I don't feel super confident in. Besides a few starters, I don't feel super confident in those guys as well, too. I know, their offense is one of the best in the American League, second in runs, only behind the New York Yankees. But if you're playing as a wild card spot, it's going to be tough. So we'll see how they navigate it. I have Baltimore at the 4th spot. Number 3.
Number 3, I have the Yankees dropping down a spot here. They've still been one of the most consistent squads all season, other than Judge's little slump and some injuries. They should be solid. I just kind of feel like the National League race is way more straining on a squad this season. So that's why I have the 2 National League teams above the Yankees, even though I got the Yankees at the top of the American League, of course.
Yeah, I have the Yankees as my number 3 team as well, too. They actually do not move at all from the last rankings that I had, despite a lot of things moving around them. 83 and 61, top of the AL East right now. They might have beef in the broadcast booth, but the team is holding steady. Did you hear about this broadcast booth stuff?
What specifically?
Michael Kay and some other dude that they I forget the other guy's name right now. It's just terrible because it makes the story, kind of blend together. But they were playing the Cubs over the weekend, right? And the other guy in the booth that's not with Michael Kay was talking about how Michael Kay didn't want to talk to him on the bus ride in this morning and asking if he was grumpy or something like that. And then Michael Kay was like, okay, set the scene here a little bit. The Yankees use like 2 broadcast booths. Sometimes they use Ryan Ruocco, and then they also use Michael Kay based off of, I don't know what they determined, but usually it's home, Michael Kay, away, Ryan Ruocco. And then, so Michael Kay goes, well, I heard you don't like working with me and you like working with Ruocco instead. And, the other guy starts going off. Juan Soto comes up to the bat and they do not say a word for like a minute. Gets super awkward, but I guess that's just Michael Kay and the fiery side of him. He's still one of the best announcers in baseball, but regardless, the Yankees are still the best team in the American League record-wise right now. But watch that video if you haven't had the chance.
That's hilarious because that sounds like exactly the same shit that happens on football radio in New York. Everyone just hates each other, whether it's Tiki Barber or a guy who didn't play and is just on the radio. They're just always mad. But I'll check it out for sure. That sounds funny.
Yeah. On to number 2.
Number 2, I got the Phils back up in the 2 spot. It feels like they've really separated themselves from the rest of the NL East. And it's almost like if you force weak contact and hit a bunch of homers, you're going to win most of your games, especially at home.
Yeah, I got the Phillies at number 2. They move up 2 spots from the last rankings, 86 and 58. It feels like they're finally out of the dog days of summer. They had a rough July, rough August, but they feel back in September, and that's exactly when you need to be back because Red October is about to be here.
Oh, yeah.
Number 1.
It's the Doyers, tied for the best record in baseball. Only the Mets and the Cubs have had a better month. And that is all we need to talk about them. How about Shohei?
Yeah, the Dodgers, number 1, they didn't move from the last rankings, tied for the best record in the baseball with the Bills. The big 3 is healthy, and Shohei is, what is he at, 46 and 46 right now? Let me just make sure. No, he has 47 stolen bases. So 47 stolen bases and 46 homers. He's already the first person to have a 43-43 season, and he's got a chance to go 50-50. Let me remind everybody, this guy pitches, and he's one of the best pitchers in baseball. Hopefully we see that next year because he's really electric. But the Dodgers, number 1 team in baseball in me and Skyler's mind.
Yeah.
Moving on to our other power rankings, the NFL. This one's a bit more up to interpretation than what we've known with the MLB teams. We've seen the MLB teams all play 140 games so far. We've seen all NFL teams play 1 game. So if we don't have your team in the top 15 or your team that you think is the top 5 is at number 12 for us, don't get mad, or do get mad. I don't really care because it's week 1 and your team is definitely deserves to be in the number 1 spot. Honorable mention, Skyler, do you have any?
I did pick the Steelers to win in Atlanta, but with the quarterback issues I've seen, Justin Fields is unfortunately not the answer either. I can't put them in. And Green Bay, defense looked pretty good, but Jordan Love, is it 3 weeks or is it 6? We've seen this play out where they don't put him on IR, and it's basically just to mess with the opponent. And he actually is going to be out that whole time. So I don't know.
3 honorable mentions for me. I have Seattle first. Comeback win against Denver in a weird game that they allowed 2 safeties.
Yeah.
I'm not buying into them yet, but I think they have a reputable or a decent roster. So I'll put them in an honorable mention. I also have New Orleans here. I think their performance, kind of demands a top 15 spot, but their roster, in my opinion, and their opponent in that game didn't. So I'll wait for them to win another week. If they beat the Cowboys, they'll be on this list for sure. But as of right now, they're not going to be. And then Pittsburgh as well, too. They played a very Pittsburgh-y game against Atlanta. I think we talked about this a little bit, where I expected this Atlanta offense to kind of hit it off right away, and Pittsburgh just played their game the entire way, kicked 6 field goals, didn't make it in the end zone, and won the game by 2 possessions. So
shout out Mike Tomlin.
Or not 2 possessions, by 8, which is almost 2 possessions. So Pittsburgh gets an honorable mention spot. But now in the 15, Skyler, who is your number 15?
Welcome back to the football season, Kyle, because my number 15 spot's going to be the Chargers at 1-0. I did not think they would end up here at all, but the only way to win that smash mouth style of football is to have a great offensive line, and they looked amazing against a good Raiders D line. Specifically, Alt versus Crosby is a matchup I would watch. At some point, they're going to need other guys to step up. But for week 1 and a brand new system, I thought they played their perfect game, very similar to Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I'll start off with the Colts as my number 15 team. They lose in week 1 against the Texans, but it was a hard-fought game till the very end. I think the offense looked like it had promise, and if Anthony Richardson made a couple more throws, they would have won this game by 14 points. Regardless, I think this team's got a lot of positives. They just weren't as good as the Texans that day, but I do think they deserve to be in the top half of the NFL, but just barely. Number 14.
Number 14, I went with the Jets. I would love to hear. I hope they're in your 15 and honorable mention. Jesus, that'd be bad. But we'll get into that in a second. I'll try to keep my bias out of it because I really hope in a couple of weeks we can all laugh about week 1 against San Francisco and how unfortunate this was that Shanahan got to hold the ball for 40 minutes and that eventually got all the boys fired up for a playoff run. But right now the Jets aren't on that level. They're really missing Franklin Myers in the middle of that defense, and it doesn't sound like Hassan Reddick will be showing up anytime soon either.
And number 14 for me, I have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They played really good, I think, against the Commanders team that isn't going to be good, but has some decent pieces to make it a tough game sometimes. Baker played about as good as Baker can play, and I think quarterback play alone is the reason why they should be in the top 15. They scored 37 points in their opener. And Tampa Bay, I think, deserves to be on this list. So I put them at number 14. Number 13.
Number 13, I got the Bengals. They looked really bad against New England. Maybe a worse looking offense than the Jets without T. Higgins this week. Maybe they shake it off, but they are playing Kansas City, so that's unfortunate. I didn't even try to do that, by the way. That's a Taylor Swift song. What else do we got here? Yeah, clearly a tier below Baltimore. Sorry, I went a little off script there. Clearly below Baltimore. They get the 13 spot.
My number 13 spot is going to be the Chicago Bears, who do win their opener, but it's a very ugly game for the offense. And I think them winning that game shows Caleb that you don't have to do everything to get a victory. And I think a lot of times in that game, he was trying to do a little bit too much because he's always had to at USC to get a victory with how their defense was. The Bears defense played really good, against Will Levis and Titans offense or not. Who knows? We'll see if it travels into week 2 against the Texans, I want to say, on Sunday night, which should be a fun game. But I think the Bears offense will be fine. It's just going through a little bit of growing pains with the quarterback who literally just played his first game in the NFL. So on to number 12.
Number 12, I am going to go with Tampa Bay. Big win against Washington. The offense has not lost a step yet. We probably will start to see the decline in the injuries around midseason for a team like this that's a little older. But until then, let Baker cook. He's been great so far. Some notes on the defense. Joe Tryon-Shoyinka looks awesome right next to Kalijah Kancey. And also prayers to the former Jet, Bryce Hall. He had a repeat injury to what made him fall in the draft. Fractured tibia and ankle. He's going to be out for a long time. Hopefully we see him back soon.
Damn. Number 12 for me is going to be where I put the Cincinnati Bengals. This is a reputation pick because if you're going based off of play in week 1, they would not be on this list. They looked absolutely terrible. I know they only allowed 16 points, so maybe we could say the defense was good, but the New England offense is not good either, so you shouldn't even be in that discussion regardless. Cincinnati tends to have these slow starts early in the season and just pick it up once we get to October, November, December and just go crazy. But the offense did not look good. Joe Burrow did not look healthy. Jamar Chase did not look ready. And this team just did not look prepared for the week 1 matchup in New England Patriots, and that's why they lost. Regardless, still a good roster. Still expect them to be good this season. But they're off to a slow start, and it's been something that's been recurring for this Bengals team. Number 11.
Number 11, I got the Chi-Town Bears. They finally found themselves up here, the highest they've been in Immaculate Sports history since probably the 12-win season, because they've once again figured out how to win games without great quarterback play. The only difference is Caleb Williams should be getting a little better each week and eventually become a great player. So I kind of like this system way more than a couple other teams have, what they've done to help their young quarterbacks. That's for sure.
Yeah. Number 11 for me is going to be where I slot the Buffalo Bills. They get a close win against the Arizona Cardinals at home, 34-28. I think the offense looked good. They didn't have the ball much in the first half, but were pretty efficient when they had it. Josh Allen looked very Josh Allen-y, where he was running and chucking the ball as far as he can and just making plays to the best of his ability, and he wasn't turning the ball over much except for once. And I think the 4-to-1 ratio is something that they're okay with. Their defense is the reason why they are not higher on this list. I was pretty shocked to see how much Arizona just pushed them around in the first half, and they were reluctant to adjust. I saw a TikTok that made a lot of sense about why Arizona wasn't using Marvin Harrison, especially in the first half. And they were talking just because the looks that Buffalo was giving them was just allowing Arizona to run the ball. It was this one play specifically that stuck out to me where Arizona had, I want to say 3 tight ends on the field and not even a wide receiver. Like they had 2 guys in the backfield, I want to say, and then 3 tight ends, and Buffalo's playing too high. Like, get you guys down there. They're not going to pass the ball out of that. It's a close formation. Like, the defense just felt like it was wrong. Maybe they made the adjustments in the second half to kind of fix that over, and that's why they won the game. But I'm not super impressed with this Buffalo defense. It still should be pretty decent. Number 10.
Number 10, I'm going to go with the Rams here. They lost a close one at Ford Field, but I still have a soft spot for this team despite the Puka Nacua and all the O-line injuries, because if Matt Stafford, Cooper Kupp, and Kyron Williams are all on the field, they always have a shot. I think the way they were able to answer back in the fourth quarter against that crazy pass rush gives me hope for one more run with this team. That's why they're still in the top 10 with a loss.
Yeah, the Rams are in my number 10 spot as well, too. Like you said, had some injuries, especially with Puka Nacua. Lose a close one in Detroit, got to overtime against it, just didn't get the ball in overtime, I guess, could be the problem there. Stafford's making weapons out of nobody on this team, I think, is another thing. We saw Tyler Johnson, we saw Demarcus Robinson have decent games. Like, he doesn't need much. And I think without Puka, they're going to find a way to score. It's just how well can this defense play? And in week 1, they just weren't as good enough as they needed to be to get a win. I still think this team will be consistent in the top, 10 to 15 the entire season. But week one, not getting that win, it's gotta sting, especially when you get OT. Number 9.
Number 9, I'm going to go with the Texans. Man, there's so many great quarterbacks in the AFC, and Stroud is looking right up there with them so far. Houston has had in the game, the one game they've played, a couple of really great drives led by Stroud and the ghost of Joe Mixon that it looked like it really ripped the soul out of the Indy fans on Sunday. And that's why Indy's not on my list.
Number 9 for me is where the Jets find their home. A lot higher than you had them, kind of surprisingly.
I'm still angry.
Put them here because I don't want to overreact at all from week one. I think it's not a great thing to have happen, obviously losing by 3 or 4 possessions, whatever, in week one. But to get smacked around early and realize you're not as good as what you think you are is important for some teams sometimes. And I think for the Jets team that hasn't, had to go through a ton of adversity with Aaron Rodgers at the quarterback position. I know they did last year with him not being at the quarterback position, but for them to know, hey, we could still lose games even with this guy as a quarterback is going to mean something to this defense and say, hey, we got to play better. And we got to, not just beat teams, but we got to blow them out or at least try to. And I don't think we saw them try to do that at all in week one. And it's going to be an awakening, but I still like this roster a ton. I like the weapons. I like the quarterback. I like the defense, even like the special teams. So I'll put number 9.
Yeah.
Number 8.
Number 8, I'm going to go with one of our rivals. It's the Miami Dolphins. If Javon Holland doesn't make that play to bail out Miami, we might be talking about them down near the Jets and the Chargers, but they didn't. If you can win the games you're supposed to win early on, you're not going to get bumped down that much. A win is a win. Another team that had to deal with some crazy distractions right before the game, which was unbelievable. We don't have to get into all that yet until we hear more about it, right, as the days go on. But what I do know is they have a massive game against Buffalo on Thursday night.
Number 8 for me is going to be where I slot the Dallas Cowboys, who had a very strong showing in week one against Cleveland. I think it would have been pretty easy for them to lose this game, even with how bad Cleveland was because of Dak Prescott, coming into the day was not on a contract past this year. I know he had an extension that day. But that had to have been something looming on his mind, perhaps taken away from some of his effort. Game planning, CeeDee Lamb wasn't there all training camp. She just got a contract extension like a week and a half ago. That could have been an issue. Didn't matter to the Cowboys. They got the job done against a tough Cleveland Browns team, even without Nick Chubb and even with Deshaun Watson not knowing that he's playing football. But they did a good job. And I think that to acknowledge the Cowboys playing well is big. And that's why I have them at the number 8 spot. Number 7.
Number 7 is where I have the Buffalo Bills. Little higher than I thought I would, too. But what Josh Allen and some of those members of the defensive line were able to do to come back in this game was incredible. I mean, Josh Allen's best goal line option has been Mac Hollins this season. That's just crazy. And that's probably why Allen kept to himself and why he's going to be an MVP candidate all season. And I think this is the end of the tier 2 teams. And after this, we'll be getting into the real contenders.
Number 7 for me, I'll talk about when I get to the top tier in a second. But we're definitely still on the number 2 tier here with the Houston Texans. Close divisional win, week 1. It was ugly. It was pretty at sometimes as well, too. But to get the win in Indy in a tough one is huge, especially when it's going to mean tiebreakers once we get to January, if it comes down to that. I was shocked to see that Joe Mixon had 30 carries. Is he going to be able to hold that the entire season? I suspect not, because Joe Mixon's not a young running back anymore. He's pretty seasoned vet now at this point. But regardless, I think the passing game will get better in the second half as well, too. Not saying it was bad. It just wasn't as good as what I expected it with the 3, Nico Hollins, Stephon Diggs, and Tank Dell wide receiver core. They were good. They got the big plays when it mattered most, and that's what's going to get your team wins. So Houston gets in the number 7 spot. This is the best team in Texas. Number 6.
Number 6 is where I got the Philadelphia Eagles. The secondary and new members of the O-line are a little suspect compared to Dallas, in my opinion. But Saquon Barkley, A.J. Brown, it seemed like they were the only guys that looked amazing and didn't slip on every play on that shitty Brazil turf. So they're off to a great start, of course.
Number 5 or number 6 for me, my bad, is going to be the Miami Dolphins. And this is the last team, I'd say, in tier 3. I want to say there's 2 tiers above this. But Miami Dolphins, they had a really rough first half, turned it on in the second half. And it just goes to show how this team is like the ultimate win probability change in an instant team, because they can make the turnover happen on defense and then strike super quickly on offense to make you say, holy shit, it was a 17-point game. Now it's a 10-point game, and they're about to get the ball back as well, 2 and 3 plays. That's scary. This team is going to be just fine, even only with scoring 20 points in game 1. The Tyreek stuff is ridiculous. Again, like you said, we're not going to get into that right now, but Miami looks really good is what I got from this game. Number 5.
Number 5, I'm going to go with the real best team in Texas. It's the Dallas Cowboys. I know we talked about it a little last week, but didn't get too in depth because we talked about literally every single team in the league. But yes, the Cowboys will not be able to run the ball very well this season, but everything else looks great. We've seen a bunch of teams win their divisions without the traditional running scheme over the past couple of years. The Bills, the Bengals, Kansas City 3 times before Pacheco, the Houston Texans. And these 2 games against the Eagles are going to be epic. Dak can have a similar year to last year. I think they can do basically the same thing. I understand, though, that doesn't translate into postseason wins. 100% with you. This is my regular season power rankings right now.
Number 5 for me, starting off the tier 2, is the Detroit Lions, who got the win in overtime. And like Danny Campbell said in his speech, like, this team is unbreakable now at this point. If this didn't break you against that team that's trying to avenge their loss in the wild card round last season, or was it the wild card? Yeah, it was the wild card round. They played Tampa in the second round. But if that team didn't break you, then no one's going to break you. And I think that's a very true point about this Detroit Lions team. I think we saw a lot of, I would say, struggles, but kind of hitches that we weren't really expecting with their team, that they're definitely going to fix up in the next couple of weeks, like getting Amon-Ra free more than they were able to in week 1. But I did see a lot of things that were very encouraging, just like how Montgomery ran, how they used Gibbs, how Jameson Williams was really utilized more than I expected him to. And I think Detroit played a good, complete game against a good team in the Los Angeles Rams. Number 4.
Yeah, I got the Lions at the 4 spot, and I'm right there with you. It was an ugly win against the Rams for sure on Sunday Night Football, but I also loved the way they used Montgomery and JMO for sure. Nobody can tackle right now because it hasn't been allowed for months. So power backs have been dominating right now. I'm sure things will chill out until it starts snowing in a couple months from now, and then the power backs will come back. And also a guy like Jameson Williams on the deep crosser is basically unstoppable if you can't trip him up. I wouldn't,
especially if you have a good run game too.
Yes, 100%. And because of that, I wouldn't worry too much about Gibbs and St. Brown's lack of touches yet. It's more of a schematic choice, I think.
Number 4 for me is the best team that has a loss, or the highest team that has a loss. It's the Baltimore Ravens coming in at number 4. They went into Kansas City and almost pulled off a ridiculous upset. And I know, ridiculous upset, this was the AFC Championship game. Baltimore's supposed to be good and, compete in this game. We'll talk about Kansas City in a second and my thoughts on them. But Baltimore played a great game against a really tough team in some really tough circumstances. And Lamar Jackson played the way that Lamar Jackson plays. And that's just, you never know what he's going to do. He can beat you on the ground, beat you in the air. And he, probably should have hit Zay Flowers wide open. Probably should have made a better throw to Isaiah Likely to tie the game, or, come within 1 point of the game at the end there. But Baltimore's going to be just fine. They just played Kansas City on Thursday night to open the season. Don't overreact. They are going to beat the shit out of my Raiders this week. Number 3.
Again, basically the same exact notes for the Ravens in the 3 spot for me. Yes, they lost week 1. It was by 1 toe. I'm not going to overreact to that like so many before have done. These guys are going to be just fine. Hey, did you know Lamar lost some weight?
Oh, is that Vic Lamar? Yeah, I did hear about that.
Yeah, that's all.
He's getting those semi-glutides like Cartman. Semi-glutides, yeah.
Looking like Jay Daniels.
Number 3 for me is going to be where I slot the San Francisco 49ers. And I think this top 5, whether the order changes or not, is to be determined, of course. But I think the top 5 just really sticks out to me as a neck ahead of everybody else in the NFL. And the Niners are a part of that group, of course. They had pretty much a perfect showing in week 1. They were able to rest McCaffrey. They were able to utilize Jordan Mason the way that he wanted to. They were able to navigate some of the preseason debacles that they had going on with Ayuk and Trent Williams as well too. I was blanking on his first name for a reason. The defense was good against an offense that a very well respected group, and this is just kind of what this Niners team does. So many times where they have had over the last 5 or 6 years where it's just like, oh, this could be a game. This could be a really good game, and then the Niners just beat the shit out of them. They've done that so many times. And it's crazy to think they haven't won a Super Bowl in this period. Will they? Who knows? But if they don't get one, it's a very big disappointment for this era. Number 2.
Yeah, well, it's confirmed. The 49ers are still a well-oiled machine in Santa Clara, just like I said every single week last week. Will Shanahan ever adjust his conservative play style in big games? That seems to be the only question I have for this team. Luckily for the Niners, they have a lot of months to prepare for that because they looked really good last night.
Number 2 is going to be where I slot the Philadelphia Eagles, who are currently the best team in the NFC in my mind. Maybe it's just a slight hair above the San Francisco 49ers. Saquon was used perfectly. Jalen Hurts played awful, and they still got the win. The weapons are good. The defense is good. I like this Eagles team a lot, even though they allowed 29 points. They're going to be just fine. They just went to Brazil and had to play a game on a surface that was terrible. Can we talk about how the NFL should never go back to fucking Brazil to play an NFL game?
That was embarrassing.
It was so terrible that they played on a surface like that, and everybody was slipping. The announcers were trying to play it off in a weird way. Oh, you see that they're trying to find the right footing in this scenario. And it's just like, dude, don't fucking go back to these places and play these games. And I'm not even talking about, the people want to call it fear mongering. People want to call it all this stuff, the reputation of Brazil. If people are going to be more likely to get hurt in that stadium, don't do it. I don't care what the money brings in, but Roger Goodell clearly does. So fuck you, Roger Goodell.
That's why they're still talking about the Euro and the Spanish leagues coming in 20 years, please don't let that happen. Tonight's a very big indication that should never happen.
Yeah. On to number 1.
It's Kansas City. They got the job done against Baltimore. It was really close, but here's the thing. Patrick Mahomes looked pretty unstoppable other than one bad throw. Chris Jones was literally running through unblocked double teams. It was pretty awesome to watch, even though I'm not the biggest Chiefs fan. Obviously, you aren't either, but from an interior guy, you could see the difference between which D-lines are ready and, the Jets struggling to stop Jordan Mason last night. Kansas City is ready to roll.
Yeah. Philadelphia is where Tier 2 ends, and Kansas City is where Tier 1 starts and ends, because this is the best team in football by a wide margin, in my opinion. Take out Patrick Mahomes, put in Josh Allen, this team wins the Super Bowl. Take out Patrick Mahomes, put in Brock Purdy, this team wins the Super Bowl. That's how good this Chiefs team is. They have a great O-line. They have ridiculous weapons now around Kansas City. And maybe, name for name, stat for stat, there might not be as good as, say, Houston or Philadelphia or the Niners. But when you look at what they need in this offense, they got everything, man. They have a tight end that is their quarterback's best friend when it comes to playing. He knows exactly where to sit. He knows exactly what to do in every single situation, and he's going to get the job done there. They have a wide receiver, Rashee Rice, who has the ability to be great rack-wise, take the stuff over the middle and run, as we saw 5 or 6 times in that game. And I hated going against Rashee Rice in fantasy. They have a guy in James Worthy who can just take the top off of James Worthy. Xavier Worthy. James Worthy played basketball, but Xavier Worthy might end up with more rings than James Worthy with how this is going. Xavier Worthy's got the ability to take off the top of any defense at any time and end around, a 9, whatever you want to do with him, he can do. And while you have him going deep, you have Rashee able to do all this stuff. You have Travis Kelce able to do all this stuff. You also have a running back who runs the hardest in the NFL, I would say, in Isaiah Pacheco, and he's going to find the way into the end zone a ton this year. Might as well say they have Patrick Mahomes, the most talented quarterback of all time. And they have, in my opinion, probably a top 2 or 3 defense in the league as well, too. I'm kind of ashamed I didn't pick it, but I think we could be on serious 17-0 perfect season watch with the Kansas City Chiefs with how good this team is going to be. And an analogy, or I don't know if analogy is the right word for it, but I kind of wondered what it was like to be an NBA fan, not a Warrior fan during the, Steph, KD, Clay, Draymond era, and how much it had to have sucked. This is what it's like in the NFL right now with this team. This is the dynasty. This is the perfect team. And instead of adding Kevin Durant, they added a guy who runs a 4.21 40, and Xavier Worthy. So league's cooked. And I don't know how long it's going to be cooked for. It could be cooked for a long, long time because it's not like they got salary cap isn't real. I'll just say that.
Yeah, I think as long as no one steps in and creates a rule to stop this like they did with the Warriors so many times, there's probably no end.
But what rule can they make, man? The Bills gave them the pick to pick Xavier Worthy, and they gave them the pick to pick Mahomes or Tyreek or something like that as well too. Like I just don't get it. Like there's no beating this team. The only way that they don't win the Super Bowl this year is if Mahomes gets hurt. It's the only way I see it happen.
Yeah.
And even then, they'll probably still win with Chad Henne or who's their backup? Carson
Wentz.
He could probably do it. He could probably do it with that team. Who knows?
They make it.
They'll go get Tannehill or something like that. Matt Corral. He can do it. Derek Carr. Oh, my God. Can you imagine Derek Carr or something like that? That'd be crazy.
No.
Anyways, done with the Chiefs. On to college football that does not have a Patrick Mahomes. Or do they?
Yeah, Dylan Raiola is pretty close, that's for sure. He looks just like him, man. He had a good game, and they're ranked now, but he is not in the Heisman Watch yet, just a freshman. Let's get into it, though. We'll start off with my honorable mention. Travis Hunter will always be in consideration. There's no need to ignore him. I just wanted to move up some of the risers a little bit so we could talk about them. And the first big riser, who I even moved up on my big board, it's the USC quarterback Miller Moss with the 5 spot. Here comes another pro-style quarterback from USC. Miller Moss has been one of the most accurate quarterbacks in college football after 2 games. He just lit up Utah State. But now it's time for the real test. After their bye, they are at the Big House, number 17, Michigan. This will be a good test to see how close is he actually to a guy like Quinn Ewers, who most people agree should go in the first round. Number 4, I have a member of the Ole Miss Rebels, and it's not Jackson Dart. It's the running back Henry Parrish Jr. No Judkins, no problem for the Rebels. Parrish had 165 on the ground, 4 touchdowns. It was Middle Tennessee State. We can only really project SEC guys until they get into conference play. So I'm going to give him a shot over Jackson Dart, a guy who is maybe a system guy with how quick everything moves there with all the RPOs. Not a system quarterback. The 3 spot, that will be Cam Ward. Yes, he just lit up Florida A&M for 4 touchdowns, but that's not why he's on the list. He destroyed Florida. He really looks like a guy that could take this team to the playoffs, and they play Ball State next week, so don't expect him to go anywhere. Number 2, I mentioned him a minute ago, Quinn Ewers. of the Texas Longhorns. He really looked like a pro quarterback at Michigan on Saturday. Only 246, but 3 touchdowns, no turnovers, while being a true improviser on the run most of that game. He looked really well. And top spot, can he actually do it? Ashton Jeanty, Boise State? Well, he did it again last week, 192, 3 touchdowns at number 7 Oregon at Autzen, almost enough for the upset. But at the end of the day, 5-star receivers are going to burn 3-star corners from Utah. And Dirk Cutter did not give Jeanty the ball on the last drive for some reason. They have a bye week and then a tune-up game against Portland State because they had an absolutely brutal start to the schedule. So hopefully my guy Jeanty can keep putting up these numbers. And I'm hashtag Jeanty for Heisman all the way right now. Obviously, some of these quarterbacks can rise up once they play bigger games, but Ashton Jeanty's played one of the biggest games of the season so far. Why not?
Yeah, I'm right there with you with Jeanty for Heisman. I was watching that game, of course, as well too, because it was late game, and it wasn't the only game on, but it was probably the best game on by far. And as soon as you saw that, I want to say like 76-yard touchdown run that he had, as he was running, I'm like, they win this game. That's a Heisman moment right there. It was, I think Lamar Jackson when he won his Heisman. He also came from like super far odds that year as well too, and it was super early in the year too. I think it was against Florida State. I want to say where he had his like Heisman moment and scored like 6 touchdowns, and they beat him, and he was making all these crazy plays, and everybody's like, oh, this Lamar Jackson guy might be legit. And I think we just saw that game with Ashton Jeanty.
Yeah. Well, I got a little bit of a scheduling for everybody to check in what time, what day on some of these games. Not the craziest matchups for week 3. We got a lot of bye weeks. We'll start off with Thursday night. If Buffalo Miami sucks for some reason, even though it should be a good game, on Fox there's a ranked matchup. Number 20 Arizona at number 14 K-State. Should be very high scoring. The first ever Big 12 game for Arizona. 9 a.m.
That's on Friday, by the way. So we're good there.
Oh, thank the Lord for that one, right? I mean, it must have been Arizona State that was on Thursday. I saw some game on Thursday and was like, oh, well, I guess if the Thursday night football game isn't good.
Arizona State is on Thursday versus Texas State. So, yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Okay, ranked matchup Friday. That would have been so weird if they did double rank on a – they win against Peacock, though, that's for sure. Sure. Okay, let's get to Saturday. Number 4, Alabama at Wisconsin at 9 a.m. Wisconsin's always a team that can get the upset when the defense plays lights out. Also at the same time, very similar game, number 16 LSU at South Carolina. Pick your poison there. Maybe we get an upset. At 9:45 is the only other ranked matchup. It's number 24 Boston College, led by Billy O'Brien. They're going to go to number 6 Mizzou. If you can find a stream for it, it'd be nice because I think it's on SEC Network and no one has that anymore. 12:30, 2 underrated matchups at the midday slot. Texas A&M at Florida. Supposed to be a great game. Doesn't sound great, but everyone should at least watch a couple drives of the true freshman DJ Lagway. He looks very good. At the same time, we got the Apple Cup in week 3 for some reason. 2-0 Wazoo at 2-0 Washington. 2-0 Washington's defense coordinator, of course, is Steve Belichick now, so that's pretty cool. The winner of this probably gets ranked. And basically, that's all you need to know unless there's some upset watch. Colorado plays Colorado State at 4:30.
Yeah. I'm looking at it, too. I don't really see anything fun. This week was tough. We got Bama, Georgia, week 5. That's all I know. We got that in 2 weeks. Next thing that we got, still staying on college football, something we wanted to do starting last week, but we weren't able to fit it in with some of the crazy stuff that we were doing last week. So we're starting it this week. Maybe, bi-weekly type thing could be interesting here. But it's a season ended today. Who is your 12 teams in the college football playoff? I should have talked to you about this before, but I have my team separated into 3 spots. I have the top 4, so the teams that get a bye. I have my group of 5 team, and then I have the rest. Because it's too hard to determine, this team's 5, this team's 6, this team's 7. So if you're okay with doing it like that, then I'm okay with doing it like that.
Yeah, I basically did that except I put my G5 at 12. That's basically the only difference. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're 1 through 4 teams. So you're the conference winners, I guess. Who are your picks?
So we'll start it off with Georgia, the SEC champion. So far, they look like even better than they did with Stetson Bennett, which is crazy. So they're going to be the one spot there. Number 2, Ohio State. No real test yet, but so far so good with the new quarterback, Will Rogers. Great defense, of course. Lots of seniors coming back. Number 3, a team we talked about a little bit last week too, the Miami Hurricanes. I have them winning the ACC. They just got to beat Clemson and they're in basically because everyone else choked. And the craziest one, probably Big 12 champion. I'm going to stay neutral here and go with Utah. It's by far the best defense in the Big 12. It seems like the safe pick, but I do have another B12 team making it in. I'll say that.
Yeah, my top 4, Georgia's 1. I think that's pretty clear unless Texas wins the SEC championship game, which is crazy. Also pretty crazy in this too. I was like, oh, perfect. When I was doing this, Georgia could be 1, Texas could be 2. We got Big 10 team 3. We have it all set up already. And I was like, oh, wait, everything's changed. So Georgia 1, Ohio State I have it 2. They seem like the best team, except for maybe Penn State could be somewhat close or in the same realm. Miami is my team that I have one in the ACC. They got the best quarterback in the ACC, in my opinion, and Cam Ward. He's been really fun to watch. And then number 4, there's a few different teams you could choose here: Utah, OK State. None of them really stand out to me quite yet. But I did go with OK State because they should be able to have the run game fixed at some point in the season. And once they do, it's going to be tough to stop Ollie Gordon. Yep. And then your next 7, Skyler. Who do you got here?
Well, I think the best team so far that I've seen to not be ahead in their conference will be the Longhorns, like you said. After that, I got Penn State. It was really weird against Bowling Green, but so far, Drew Aller looks pretty good. Alabama, it seems like they're just going to ground and pound all season. Ole Miss, very similar with them. Number 9, I'm going to go with USC. I'm going to take a shot on Miller Moss and say he's the guy that finally gets them to the playoff. Number 10, Clemson. They got absolutely smacked by Georgia week 1, but this could be a Niners-Jets situation where Clemson builds that defense and just starts beating the crap out of teams in the second half. 11, I'm going to take a shot on Arizona to beat K-State and OK State and get in the playoff because Tedoroa McMillan and Noah Fafita are pretty unstoppable when they're clicking together. Those are my 7 wild cards.
Yeah, I like those. Number 5, Texas. So I don't have them in any actual ranking. I just have the teams here. I have Texas, who, like you said, by far pretty much the best team that's not going to be a top 5 or top 4 seed if they don't win their conference. Ole Miss, Penn State, USC I also chose. I have Tennessee in here with Nico. I have Utah, I think might be a bit better than Arizona once season's end, and you already had Utah winning the conference, so it doesn't matter to you. And then I have Bama, of course, as well, too, as the last team in here. I went with mostly the teams that have the better quarterbacks right now because that's what I can trust. I guess Noah Fafita in Arizona is probably the team that outlies that. But I was against picking Mizzou a little bit because I don't know too much about them. I haven't gotten to watch the games too much. I was against picking K-State and Oklahoma right now. We'll see more of them in the future, but I just felt more confident in some of these other teams. And then it gives us the Group of 5 team. They're always the most fun, unless there's one that's ranked, because I feel like you got to pick them, right?
Yeah, 100%. And that's why I have Boise State / Memphis, because Memphis is undefeated. The AP loves Memphis. They wanted to put them in last year, but Liberty, even though they're fucking terrible, they go undefeated because they're in the CUSA. And they got in and got smoked. So Liberty won't be getting in this year. It's either a 1-loss Boise or an undefeated Memphis, I think.
Or the other team that I have, the
Rebels?
NIU.
Oh,
NIU. They get the win.
No one
at
from
Notre
the
Dame.
MAC is making the playoffs, right?
If they just beat a Notre Dame team that I thought was really good.
That's true.
If they go undefeated, if they beat NC State in 2 weeks and then play their schedule out where it's bowling, okay. They have Buffalo after this week. They don't have a game this week, which I think is big because you don't get that immediate hangover right after a game. You play Buffalo next week. Self-explanatory. You play NC State the week after that. That's a big one. If you win that game, now you're really talking. You're probably going to be ranked 21st, I would say, if you get that win. Then it goes UMass, Bowling Green, Toledo, Ball State, Western Michigan, Akron, Miami of Ohio, and Central Michigan. If you win out, you win the conference, you should be the team that gets in, unless we see Memphis, go undefeated in their right. But do they have any tough games?
They just rank the American
don't.
a lot higher than the others. That's probably why.
Yeah, but they'll have a better win unless Florida State beats Memphis.
If
it happen, North Texas.
If they beat NC State, I will apologize to you, but I'd be completely shocked if they let a team from the MAC into this tournament, the first one ever. But hey, it's college football, too. Right?
Yeah,
you never know.
But if they have, say Notre Dame goes to be the team that they expect to be, and have a 1-loss or 2-loss season, it's going to be tough to not acknowledge it. But regardless, still got a long ways away. Memphis and NIU could both be completely out of it in 3 weeks. That's all we know because we don't know anything. On to our layups and bowl predictions. Last week it was rough. We went 1 for 4. I missed both my NFL picks. I had Miami -3.5 versus Jacksonville. They won by 3. Pain. Skyler had Texas -7.5 at number 10 Michigan.
Frauds.
Let's just say 7.5 was putting it lightly. This week I have the Niners -6 versus the Minnesota Vikings. If they beat the Jets by 3 possessions, they should beat the Vikings and Sam Darnold by at least 3 possessions. I have -6 here because it's a layup, but blowout watch here.
Yeah, that'd be cool. I'm going to take the Jets again here. I'm probably just torturing myself, but hey, if Zach Wilson can beat them 30-8 and they don't even have Derrick Henry anymore, the Jets should win by a touchdown, at least against Tennessee. I mean, I feel bad for Tony Pollard, honestly, because all week long, our linebackers are going to learn how to just completely dominate running backs in tackling because, if they don't, they won't make the playoffs.
On to bold prediction. Last week I had the Raiders +140. I'll move on. Skyler had Dallas +120, but he had it with the Giants +105, and they obviously did not win in those ugly-ass jerseys that they wore. This week, New England +150 is my pick. They're playing Seattle. I had Seattle just off my rankings in the top 15. I think it's because New England is going to get another upset victory here. First home game, and I think that crowd's going to be fired up to see a team that just won their opener.
I'm going to go with another single game here. The Browns to beat the Jaguars +145. Week 2 is usually the week where the pretty good defensive teams who slip up get you back and destroy everyone's bets. I understand Watson is horrible. I understand he's back in the media with some more bullshit, but I think they could squeak out a game against Jacksonville. I have these teams ranked right next to each other in my mind. So why not? Why not?
Yeah. That's going to do it, though, for episode 209. Shout out the 209 Mayor, Dallas Braden. Probably should have done that shout out earlier in the episode, but still fits here. We always do our shout outs at the end of the episode anyways. Next week, episode 210. Probably won't see power rankings from either of the leagues. I would say we'll probably get into some other stuff. But player of the week, solid stuff probably stays.
Mm-hmm.
Heisman Watch, that stuff stays. Of course, the bets, of course. And we'll find some other stuff to talk about because we got NBA on the way as well, too. And we'll see how it goes there. Regardless, any closing remarks?
Yeah, depending on how these games go in week 2, maybe we have some overreactions again. That's always fun to look back on.
Yep.
But yeah, that's all I got. 209, A's up 2-0 in Houston. Ground out. Let's go. Perfect way to end the episode, right? We'll see you guys next week. 210. Let's go Jets.